Hi guys, this is Emnel from Untitled Gamer. We're going to start a brand new playthrough of Hearts of Iron 4, this time as the Empire of Japan. And we're going to do it on the veteran difficulty. And Japan was my favorite nation to play in Hearts of Iron 3 and Black Ice, so I'm pretty excited to see how they changed. And from what I can tell, on the first glance, they changed quite a lot, at least the gameplay and the challenges they face. So as I said, we'll go with veteran difficulty, and that will impose on us some penalties. Production efficiency cap minus 20%, which is the most important one. Well, all of them are pretty important. Research time plus 10%, and political power gain minus 25%, which, well, boils down to minus 50% for the reasons I will explain in a sec. We'll go with the Ironman mode. I do honestly hope that I won't mess things up and forget to record or forget to plug my mic in at some point, but yeah, okay, let's just do that and stop, hope for the best. This is going to be Ironman Japan YouTube. Oh, damn it, YouTube. Alright, and we're going to save to cloud. Yes. Here we go. Alright, so a quick look at our territory. As you can see, we own the mainland Japan, some islands up top, Kuril Islands, parts of Sakhalin, as well as Korea, and quite a big chunk of Manchuria. We own Manchuria, basically, a big part of mainland China. Today we also have a puppet of Manguko. Let's hope that's more or less a right pronunciation, which is not very useful, but hey, we have it. Basically, the first thing we need to take a look at when playing Japan is the resource map mode, because unlike in Hearts of Iron 3, where you could more or less weasel your way around the resource problems by just adjusting a few sliders and whatnot, here the resource game is on. The main reason Japan had to expand is visible at the glance when we see that we are only producing 4 oil, only 8 aluminium, and barely enough steel to last us a year and a half tops, and even that will hurt our production of ships. Only 2 resources that we have in more or less decent supply for a year or 2 are chromium and tungsten. So we'll have to take a look at our neighbors and see where we can get some. Up north we have Soviet Union that we don't want to attack just yet, because, well, they are much more powerful than us at this point, and that wouldn't end well. Similarly with Philippines, that are a puppet of United States, we don't want to poke the bear just yet. Well, same thing with France and United Kingdom. Very little possible gains early on for a huge cost, so we want to avoid that. There are, however, 3 possible targets for our fairly early expansion. First and most obvious is China. China will be our main goal, and that's basically non-negotiable. We'll want to start a war with China sometime in the first half of 1937. Historically, it started in July, but well, we'll see how it goes. Probably around February, I'd say, but we'll see how things develop. The other 2 choices of our expansion can be Siam, which isn't guaranteed by anyone, and owns some tasty rubber. Rubber is something we do not produce at all, but need in great amounts. So this is important, but even more tasty are the Netherlands colonial possessions. Dutch have quite a lot of oil, as you can tell. Well, all the oil we can possibly get so early on, it would be a huge boost. They have some aluminium and laugh all you want, but those 6 aluminium will actually come in handy, and they have a metric. That's basically a metric shit ton of rubber. Let's call it as it is, which not only will basically give cure us of any rubber issues for the rest of the game, but it will also allow us to get some civilian production due to trade, since we'll be able to sell some if we acquire any of those. As far as France and United Kingdoms go, we don't want to go for them just yet. So keep that things in mind. We will probably attack all 3 of those within first 3 years. But for now, let's just walk through our research and focus. Focus 3 is basically the most defining part of every nation, so we'll take a closer look. This is our main political jumping point for the early game, which is our conflict with China. This one has a small 50% chance of getting us some free territory, which is very nice if it happens, but let's, for the sake of a challenge, hope it doesn't. This one basically, as you can see, leads us to war with China. Chinese puppet gives us a 60% chance that China will basically bend its knee and become our puppet, which would make things much easier, because war with China isn't as easy as it sounds. Not sure how easy it sounds, but it really isn't as easy. And if you ever played any Hearts of Iron 4 games, you see that China seems to win the conflict when AI is battled out. But we don't want that either. We want all China for ourselves, no puppeting, no nothing. So we'll go with this. We'll talk about other techs when other unlocks when time comes, but for now let's focus on the ones we want to get early on before we go to war with China. This is obviously the most obvious. Let's go with that. This is the most obvious one, since everyone knows that you want to get research slot ASAP. For that we need spiritual mobilization, which is a nice bonus, but not exactly something we need right now, but beggars choosers, things like that. Then we have student mobilization, which grants us a minor research bonus for land doctrines, but not bad one. Imperial austerity, on the other hand, gives us a huge bonus, and one that will be more and more useful the more game progresses, because it lowers our consumer goods factories requirement by -5%. Which at the start of the game means that we'll lose 25% less and then 33% less factories due to this mechanic, which is very important. I will get to that when we talk about our production industry policies. And here it's fairly simple, 3 civilian factories, which are always a very nice choice for a game. But there is also one stray tech here, a stray unlock here, that grants us 4 military factories without further prerequisites. And because of the specifics of Japan and the fact that we basically want to go to war within a year and a bit, we will actually start with this one. Unlike in situations where we plan for war in 3 or 4 years. Now let's go for research. First three research choices are almost always obvious, and it will be the same here. So basic machine tools, construction, and electronic mechanical engineering. They are particularly important on veteran difficulty, as you can see, because we have some hefty penalties to both our research and production. If we take a look at production, we basically lose 40% of our early game production capabilities, which will hurt us pretty bad, and we'll have to. But we'll try to get by. I think I have a good plan how to do that, and since we are here, let's actually let's actually talk about the last research, because this is going to be the odd one. It is usually a good idea to start as our fourth research on top of three basic ones with a land doctrine, and we are going to do just that this time as well. But we are actually going to ditch Grand Battle Plan doctrine, which in my opinion is pretty mediocre, pretty weak at the best of times, and it's particularly awful for Japan, since all the planning bonus it gives you pretty much doesn't work for naval invasions. Troops that are preparing for such invasions do not get any planning bonus, and landing and then sitting there for 2 months for your planning bonus to reach 80% is pure madness. So when we it would help us at the early stages of the war with Japan, and perhaps later in our wars in Asia, but I don't think it's worth it. I think it's an awful doctrine for Japan, which makes this icon actually pretty funny. What I would suggest is going for the Spear of Firepower, or even Mass Assault. Both have pretty nice techs, pretty nice bonuses that are much better for us, and would allow us to succeed in different ways. But early bonuses granted by Spear of Firepower are basically better than what the Mass Assault provides, and for that reason we are going to go with and well, I basically haven't tried this one yet, and so we are going to actually go with Spear of Firepower this time, and we'll research this. We'll lose our Grand Battle Plan bonuses, but we really don't care. This should finish by this will finish before we go to war with China, and plus 20% soft attack for all battalions that are in support battalions is going to be a very important bonus for us. Right, so when we have research out of the way, civilian factories, civilian production or construction, here it's a bit of a toss-up, because for the same reason we chose a focus that grants us military factories, it wouldn't be an awful idea to start producing military factories from the get-go. But I think we can handle China and other early wars even while producing, while not strangling our economy. For the reason that, consumer goods production that I mentioned earlier, we have to sacrifice 20% of our factories for production of goods. That counts for all the factories, both total number basically, which adds military and civilian ones. Actually, it doesn't count naval dockyards as far as I know. Yes, civilian and military factories, we have 48, and we use 20%, that is 10 of those to produce consumer goods, which pretty and those factories are wasted from our point of view. So if we were to build more and more military ones, we would, and we, as you remember, we are getting 4 in 70 days. That would significantly lower our ability to build anything else. So we will actually stick to civilian factories for the sake of our abilities to build things in the 2nd and 3rd year and beyond. I will just queue up a bunch. We won't finish them all, but that would be a good start. We don't want to miss something and actually lose a few days of production. Now, for our military factories, we have 22, which seems alright, but we have huge needs, and we'll actually struggle with our supplies quite a bit. First thing we want to do is put what is 13 factories on infantry equipment. We'll have significant infantry equipment troubles in not too distant future. Then we'll actually put 4 factories into support equipment. As you remember, we only have 6 aluminium. We will actually axe this carrier naval bomber. As for interwar fighter, we'll get to see. We don't have an actual fighter, so that's also the question. We can switch that, but and we don't actually need those fighters to win the war in China. For that reason, we will axe this one as well. In my previous tries, I actually produced some fighters, but a problem here is that we don't have enough planes to provide enough. We can't produce enough planes to provide serious air superiority in those big regions that China has. So we'll just axe this one like this and use our aluminum on support equipment that we'll actually need. And last 2 factories will go here. We'll have to waste some of the rubber because we are going to buy actually. You know what, in this case, when we are not building planes, we actually aren't going to buy any rubber. We'll be cheap, and I think we'll be able to survive without it for just a bit. We'll get back to it later, but as the last thing that we'll want, for now we used all our factories, but as you can recall, we'll have another 4 in just a bit. We'll queue up 4 factories for building artillery. We'll need some for our first war, and I will queue another 2 for motorized just yet. And as I mentioned, we'll be buying some oil. I'll cancel those because they were not optimal. I will go ahead and buy some oil from, let's see, from Venezuela, I'd say. We'll only buy 1 because we don't really care about our ships just yet. We won't face any naval threats of a serious nature for the first few years. The first enemy that we'll encounter that will have navy that can match ours is United Kingdom, and even then a whole Royal Navy actually starts perhaps 20% stronger than the Japanese Navy, which isn't as much as you would think. So we are in a very strong position navy-wise, and if you recall, the naval production doesn't use production efficiency. So our naval capabilities aren't hindered by the difficulty in any other way than the fact that we'll struggle a bit more researching stuff for that. And since we are at it, let's we kind of rushed through the research, so just let's go back for a second, see what we start with. We start with both motorized and marines, which is nice. We don't, however, start with mountain infantry, which is a big shame, to put it bluntly, because China and beyond are pretty mountainous. There's a lot of mountains, a lot of hills, and we on many of those fronts we would love to have some mountain infantry. We won't have research power to use them just yet, and well, we wouldn't have army experience to use to create a division for that anyway. So let's skip that, and we had to skip that one. Here we are basically up to date, except support weapons, if we don't count the mountaineers. Here we start with both engineers and recon, which is actually very nice. Then we'll focus on both field hospitals and logistic companies. Our armor is alright. We don't have a heavy armor, which would actually be fairly useful in our situation, nor the second level of light one. And our production is so weak, and we are so desperate for infantry equipment that we can't afford that anyway. And even if we could, most of the territory we'll be fighting on isn't very friendly to armor because of the terrain penalties we would encounter. It's actually a mostly infantry-based combat around here, so we won't be nearly as focused on our armor as we were in German playthrough. This is what particularly makes Japanese and German playstyles very different, pretty much an opposite of each other in many ways. And one of the reasons I've chosen this nation as our second playthrough. Here, our pride and glory, Japanese Navy, we actually start leaps and bounds ahead of everyone else when it comes to naval research. Even the Royal Navy starts with only one up-to-date researched ship. We start with all but two. The biggest shame is the lack of destroyers, which are extremely useful, but as I mentioned, we don't have any naval threats, so we can survive that no problem. Our naval doctrine is base track, which is carrier focused and very historical choice here, and we'll stick to that. It's alright. We have, like many nations, those two, naval bombers and close air support. A strong kicker is that we already start with carrier versions research, which is nice. We don't have a fighter, but unlike in our wars in the mainland Europe, fighters and air power as a whole won't be as big of a thing for us for the first few years. We'll discuss that later, but we can chill on that and don't really worry about not having up-to-date fighters. Air doctrine, we'll get back to it when we will be deciding on what kind of wars we'll be fighting. Here, you've seen that, it's pretty obvious. You have synthetic oil, but that's about it. And let's get back to the port. As you can see, we are building up-to-date battleship, up-to-date carrier, which is great, and a bunch of heavy cruisers. Well, actually one heavy cruiser, a few submarines, and two of which are older types, but they're almost finished, so we'll let them be. And here we have some older destroyers, but destroyers are very useful. Still, I think we'll just finish this one and focus on our up-to-date things and get back to that later. We'll actually want to finish this carrier fairly early. but we can't really afford paying for carriers just yet, which is for aircraft for it just yet. So we'll have to pass on that. We won't be able to use it in our first wars, but once again, we are pretty set on navy as that we already have. This one uses much more steel, and if we were to just put everything we have in steel, those wouldn't finish at all. So let's just put the. Oh, as you can see, we used our last dockyard, and we just used our last berth still, which is pretty awful. As you can see, we are bleeding resources left and right. We'll have to worry about motorized sooner rather than later, but let's keep it as it is for now. At least till we finish our first factory, I'd say. Alright, and as the last thing that we'll do in this episode, I think, is we'll take a look at our air and navy. We'll talk about divisions in the next episode, because we are already running late, and that's a very important topic. So our destroyers, let's actually, you know what, no, we'll have to do it a different way, because to make sense of it all, we'll have to just get all our navies in one place in Hiroshima, which is our main port around here. Naval base 10. Here's naval base 6. We are pretty set on our mainland naval bases, which it's a bit worse in China. We only have 2 level 3s, so which will be problematic. When it comes to air, let's select all the things that aren't based on carriers right now. Well, this one actually isn't sitting on a carrier, oddly enough. Alright, and let's cancel them all. There we go. We wouldn't be able to reform them just yet. Well, actually it works now. It used to not work. But as you can see, if we don't count, let's open this window once again. We have a bunch of fighters on our carriers. We'll have to adjust them, because as you can see, only 30 out of 45 for some reason. We want, let's see, do we have any naval bombers? The ones we, as we can remember, we do. All right. Do we want the naval bombers? I think we do. We want 10 of those, and we want another 8 fighters, I'd say. Or do we? Thing is that, okay, we will have to, let's actually set the limits properly, and we'll worry about that later. As you can see, we have actually 15, 18, that's 34, and okay, 2 less set limit. Alright, so that's what we'll be going with on our carriers. Empty carriers, and let's keep it at that. That was this one. Those one, on the other hand, seem to be pretty fit. No, those are they have more, because those are newer designs. We'll increase the amount of fighters here as well by 9 to 18 actually. We'll have to fiddle with it later again, however, because one of the issues here is in this region is the fact that we won't have range for most of our planes most of the time, so we'll have to really try to capture airplanes while at war. Sometimes even build some at our front lines, and well, things like that. We'll have you'll see what comes, but that also means that we'll have to move around our air fleet, wings, even the ones on carriers, sometimes to land, sometimes back to carriers and whatnot. So this is all for now. And what is left, you can see here. We have 200. Okay, now I actually don't remember which kinds of planes were those. Let's look back at that. Let's pick the sheriff. That will be easier. So 200 interwar fighters on top of what we have, but we also have some fighters from carriers that we aren't using. That will put us at 300 actually, which is alright. China, I believe, starts with around 100 fighters, so as you can see, we should be able to handle them pretty well, and they have even worse economy than we do, so I'm not worried that they will outproduce us. Same close air support, we have quite a few, plus some of carrier versions, which puts us just around 200 as well. Some standard tactical bombers, and some carrier naval bombers that we may use on land as well for some convoy raiding when we are at war with Netherlands or China. Alright, I think that's it for this episode. In the next one we will take a look at our Navy once it will redeploy, but first at our land forces, which are a massive mess and which we will have to get to into a fighting shape basically by the end of the year, which it is going to be fun. So thanks for watching, first thanks for listening, and see you back in a bit.